I thought it was a hallucination. I'd been hiking that trail for years. Same trees, same birdsong, same smell of damp soil and pine needles. But that day, something was different. I had just rounded the bend near Dead Man's Hollow when I saw it. Or I thought I saw it. At first, it looked like a lump of dark fur tangled in some bramble. Maybe a fallen raccoon, or a chunk of rotted deer hide. But then it moved. Barely. A trembling breath. I stepped closer, boots crunching softly on last year's leaves. My stomach dropped. It was a bear cub. It couldn't have been more than a few months old. Ribs like piano keys, sunken eyes, flies crawling across its muzzle. Its tiny tongue hung to the side like a discarded ribbon. The air around it was eerily still, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. My first instinct was to back away. You don't mess with bears, even cubs. Especially cubs. Their mothers never stray far. But something wasn't right. There was no sound, no crashing through the underbrush, no warning huffs or low growls. Just silence. That terrifying kind of silence. I crouched low. Hey, little guy. You alive? Its eyes fluttered open. Barely. That was enough. I stood there, frozen. My brain cycling through options. Call someone? Who? Game wardens? Rescue center? My phone had one bar, maybe. And even if I got someone on the line, how long would it take for them to get here? This bear didn't have hours. And then I did something stupid. Or brave. Or both. I took off my flannel and slowly wrapped the cub in it. Its body was limp. No resistance. Just shallow, rattling breaths. Its fur was coarse, sticky with mud, and cold as stone. My heart pounded in my chest as I lifted it. Lighter than I expected. Like lifting an empty backpack. I hiked back the way I came. Carefully. Every step felt like a risk. My truck was parked about a mile down the road, and the whole way I kept expecting a roar from behind, the thunder of a mother bear charging. But nothing came. By the time I got to the truck, my arms were shaking, not from fear or weight, but from the sheer adrenaline. I laid the cub gently on the back seat, cranked the heat, and stared at it. What the hell am I doing? I didn't have an answer. Back home, I carried it inside like it was made of glass. Set it down on a folded blanket in the garage. It didn't move. Its breathing was shallow and uneven. I ran inside. Googled everything. What do bear cubs eat? How to rehydrate a wild animal? What to do if you find a starving cub? The answers were complicated and not comforting. Most sources said the same thing. Don't touch it. Call professionals. Let nature take its course. But I had already broken that rule. I warmed some water, mixed a tiny pinch of honey into it, and used a syringe I had from when my dog had dental surgery. I dripped the liquid into the side of the cub's mouth. Most of it dribbled out, but a few drops went in. Its ear twitched. That tiny, involuntary flick made me sit down hard on the cold cement floor. It was still fighting. I stayed there for hours, just watching, dripping water, checking its breath, Googling more. At some point, I realized night had fallen. My garage was dark except for a single bulb above us, casting long shadows. I texted my boss and said I'd be taking a sick day. I wasn't lying. Something inside me was sick, and it wasn't going to let this cub die. Around midnight, I saw its paw twitch. Then its nose moved. A wet sniffle. Hope. Real, painful, terrifying hope. Like a match in the dark. Brief. Fragile. I sat back and whispered, "Don't give up, little guy. You found me. I'm not going to let you go now." But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. Whatever came next would change everything. The next morning, I was still on the cold garage floor, curled up in a camping chair, wrapped in an old sleeping bag. I hadn't really slept, just drifted in and out of something like rest, always with one ear open for the sound of the cub's breathing. It was still alive. Barely. When I got closer, I saw it had shifted an inch or two in the night. Its paw was stretched out, claws twitching now and then. Its eyes were shut, but the rise and fall of its chest was a little stronger than before. I whispered, "You're not done yet, are you?" The first real test came when I tried to feed it again. I had a tiny bottle, actually a syringe. I'd cut the tip off. I filled it with a mix of puppy formula, warm water, and a bit of honey. A Frankenstein recipe based on 3 different wildlife rescue articles and a forum post from someone in Alberta. I dripped the first few drops into its mouth. This time it swallowed. Barely, but definitely. I did a stupid little fist pump. Attaboy. A few hours later, I decided to try the vet. Not the one in town. He was mostly small animals. Cats, dogs, guinea pigs. There was another one, 20 minutes away, Dr. Halvorsen. He'd once helped me remove a fish hook from my dog's throat. Good man. I wrapped the cub gently in a towel and placed it in a cardboard box with a fleece blanket, then loaded it into the truck. It looked up at me once, just a flicker of recognition or curiosity. Or maybe I imagined it. At the clinic, the receptionist stared. "Is that a dog?" I said quietly, "Not exactly." Dr. Halvorsen came out a few minutes later, drying his hands on a towel. He took one look at the box and froze. "Is that a bear cub?" I nodded. "Found him in the woods yesterday. Alone. Starving. Barely breathing." He exhaled. "You shouldn't have brought him here." I didn't know what else to do. He shook his head. "I'm sorry, but I can't treat wildlife. It's illegal. If I touch him, I'm risking my license." My heart sank. I knew it was a long shot, but hearing it out loud was different. "So what do I do? Just let him die?" Halvorsen looked torn. "Try calling the wildlife center in Brookfield. They might help, but they're picky," and backed up. "Thanks." I carried the box back to my truck. That walk felt longer than the hike yesterday. Back home, I cleared a corner of the garage and set up what looked like a miniature animal ICU. I had an electric heater to keep the space warm, a small humidifier to help his breathing, and a camera tripod I rigged with a light so I could see him at night. Every couple hours, I gave him the formula. Every couple hours, he swallowed more. By evening, he could lift his head for a second. Then it dropped again. I sat on the floor beside him, eating crackers, talking quietly. "I don't know your name. I don't even know if you're a he or a she. Doesn't matter, I guess. You're here now. That's all that matters." At some point, I started calling him Dusty. I don't know why. Maybe because of the way his fur looked when I first found him, like he'd rolled through ashes. That night was long. I didn't sleep. I just sat there, watching him, feeding him, wiping his eyes, and checking if he was still breathing. Around 3 in the morning, he let out a weak sound. Not quite a growl. Not a whimper either. Just a noise. A sign. I whispered, "You're fighting. That's good. Keep fighting." By morning, his eyes opened fully. Glazed, tired, but open. I smiled and felt tears sting my eyes. That was the moment I knew I was all in. There was no going back. This wasn't a rescue. This was a promise. By the end of that week, Dusty could stand on his own. It wasn't graceful. He'd wobble like a drunk toddler and collapse in a pile of himself. But he was trying. Every morning, I'd find him stretched out on the blanket, blinking at me with those soft, unfocused eyes. And every time I said his name, his ears would twitch. That was new. I started calling local wildlife centers again. Brookfield didn't pick up. Left 2 voicemails. Then tried the state rehab program, busy signal. A rescue group near the river flat out told me to put the cub back where I found him and let nature take its course. I asked the woman on the phone, "What if he dies?" She said, "Then he wasn't meant to survive." I stared at Dusty while she said it. He was trying to chew on the corner of a towel. Yeah, no, that's not happening. The thing is, I wasn't trying to be a hero. I just couldn't stomach the idea of doing nothing. I reached out on Facebook. Bad idea. Half the comments were jokes. The other half accused me of being reckless. One guy wrote, "You sure it's not just a weird dog?" Someone else said, "Dude's raising a bear cub in his garage like it's a goldfish." Even my buddy Nate, who I'd gone fishing with for 10 years, called and asked if I was joking. When I told him I was serious, there was a pause. "You need to get rid of it before it gets big. Bears aren't pets, man." "I know that," I said. "But what do I do in the meantime? Let him die?" He didn't answer. That night, I stayed up drawing plants. I had scrap wood in the shed and leftover chicken wire from when I tried, and failed, to start a garden. Over the next few days, I built a pen in the far back of the garage, sturdy enough to keep Dusty safe, and maybe to keep me safe too. It wasn't perfect, but it gave him space to move, stretch, even stumble around. Feeding became a routine. Formula every few hours. Then softened fruits, mashed banana, applesauce. He started licking my hand. Not biting. Just testing. Every day, he got a little stronger. Every day, my phone rang less. I stopped telling people. One morning, around sunrise, I opened the garage door just to air things out. Dusty was asleep in his corner, snoring like a squeaky hinge. I stood there sipping coffee, just watching him, when a voice called from across the fence. "Hey, you get a new dog or something?" I nearly dropped the mug. It was my neighbor, Frank. I forced a smile. Sort of. Just helping out a stray. He squinted. Looked pretty big. What breed is it? Mix. Frank didn't push it. Just waved and walked off. After that, I kept the garage closed. Dusty had started responding to my voice. When I came in, he'd lift his head. Sometimes he'd make this weird little grunt, like a hello. He tried to follow me once and bumped into a box. It startled him, and he did this clumsy backpedal that made me laugh out loud. That night, I sat next to his pen, watching him sleep. He twitched in his dreams. I wondered what starving bear cubs dream about. I whispered, "I wish I could keep you," but I knew I couldn't. He was getting stronger, bigger. He'd outgrow the garage, and the law wasn't on my side. Even if I loved him, and I was starting to admit I did, this couldn't last. I reached into the pen and scratched behind his ear. He leaned into it. "You're not a dog, Dusty. You're not mine." He made a soft huff and kept sleeping. I stayed there for a long time, wondering how many more nights we'd have. It all fell apart on a Tuesday. I was at work, had finally gone back in, trying to act normal, when I got the call. Unknown number. I answered in the break room, half expecting a spammer. The voice on the other end was calm, official. "This is Officer Bennett from Fish and Wildlife Enforcement. We've received a report that you may be housing an injured wild animal at your residence." My throat went dry. I tried to play dumb. "Sorry? What kind of animal?" "A bear cub." There was a long silence. My heart thundered in my ears. "Sir, we'd like to stop by today for a wellness check. Are you available this afternoon?" My mind raced. Dusty was alone in the garage. If they saw him, if they took him, I cleared my throat. "I'm not home until late. Tomorrow's better. We'll see you then." I hung up and left work without saying a word. When I got home, Dusty was asleep in the corner. I stood there, just staring at him, knowing this couldn't go on. He was bigger, stronger, still clumsy, still gentle, but undeniably wild. And if they came and saw him here, I'd lose everything. So I made a plan. I packed up essentials, formula, fruits, towels, the heating pad, even the old fleece blanket. I found the big dog crate in the shed and lined it with rags. Dusty didn't like it, but I coaxed him in with applesauce. By sundown, we were deep in the woods, about 6 miles out, near an old hunting cabin my uncle used to own. It hadn't been used in years. The roof leaked, and raccoons had claimed part of the floor, but it would do. I set Dusty up in the back room, reinforced the door, blocked the windows, left the crate open. He wandered out and sniffed around, confused but quiet. I stayed the night with him, wrapped in a blanket on the floor. Next morning, I returned home to find a note taped to the door. "We stopped by for inspection. Please contact us within 24 hours. They'd been here, and I wasn't. I didn't call. That week, I lived in two worlds. During the day, I was the guy mowing his lawn, answering emails, pretending everything was fine. At night, I hiked through trees with a backpack full of fruit and syringes, keeping a bear cub alive in an abandoned cabin. Dusty missed me. I could tell. Every time I came in, he made that huffing sound, then rushed toward me and pressed his face against my side like a toddler. He tried to follow me when I left. Once he cried. That broke something in me. I sat down next to him, arms draped around his shaggy shoulders. "You're not supposed to love me. You're supposed to grow up wild. You're supposed to forget me." But he didn't forget. If anything, he clung tighter. I called every wildlife center within 300 miles. Left voicemails, sent emails, begged. Only one responded. A rehab facility in Oregon. They said they could take him, but I'd need to transport him, sign legal waivers, and prepare for the fact I'd never see him again. I didn't know what hurt more, the fear of him being taken, or the idea of letting him go. That night, I sat outside the cabin, staring up at the stars. Dusty snored from inside. I whispered, "I didn't ask for this, but I'm here now, and so are you." My phone buzzed. Another message from Fish and Wildlife. Final warning. I looked back at the cabin and made a decision. We'd leave at dawn. We left just before sunrise. Dusty didn't want to go in the crate. He never liked being closed in. I couldn't blame him. So I folded the back seat down, lined it with his blanket, and let him lie there, loose. It felt like a gamble, but this whole thing had been one long gamble anyway. The road was mostly empty. Just long stretches of pine and fog, the occasional bird overhead. We drove in silence for a while. Dusty curled up behind me, head resting on the seat edge. Every so often, I'd glance in the mirror and catch him watching me. "You okay back there, bud?" He blinked slowly. It was a long drive. Over 200 miles to the rehab center in Oregon. I'd called them again the night before. A woman named Carla answered. She didn't ask too many questions. Just said, "Bring him. We'll be ready." We stopped once for gas. I parked way in the back of the lot, out of sight. Fed Dusty some fruit and water. He sat beside me while I ate a sandwich, both of us quiet. At one point, he nudged my knee with his snout. I scratched behind his ear. "You're gonna be okay. They're good people." He leaned into my hand, then flopped down on my foot like he always did. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. Not yet. We reached the center just after noon. It was tucked deep in the trees, surrounded by fencing and pine groves. A wooden sign by the gate read Cascade Wildlife Rehabilitation. Carla met us outside. She was in her 50s, weathered, calm eyes. She walked up slowly, arms relaxed, voice soft. "This him?" I nodded. "His name's Dusty." She smiled gently. "He's beautiful. You did good." That broke me a little. I looked down, cleared my throat. She led us around the back, where a shaded enclosure stood waiting. Trees inside. Rocks. A tiny stream. It looked more like a forest than a cage. I opened the car door. Dusty didn't move at first. He looked at me, then at her, then back at me. "Go on," I whispered. "It's okay." He stepped out slowly, nose twitching, paws unsure on the gravel. Carla kept her distance. He padded toward the enclosure. Halfway there, he stopped and looked over his shoulder. Our eyes met, and everything in me screamed to call him back, to grab him, to run. But I didn't. He turned and walked inside. Carla waited a few minutes before approaching. "We'll give him space. Monitor his weight, behavior. No human contact unless medically necessary." I nodded. "How long until he's ready?" "Maybe a year. Maybe more. Depends." We stood in silence. She added, "He'll be wild again. That's the goal." I nodded again. It felt like my chest was splitting open. After a while, I said, "Can I see him again?" Carla paused. "We don't encourage visits. It confuses them. Makes letting go harder. For everyone." I understood. Before I left, I walked to the fence. Dusty was curled under a tree, watching me. I raised a hand. "Bye, little guy." He didn't move. Just watched. Then his eyes closed. I got back in the truck, hands shaking. The drive home was quiet. Emptier. When I walked into the garage that night, everything was still there. His pen, his bowls, the blanket. I stood in the center of the room and let the silence wrap around me. I didn't regret it. Not a second. But I also didn't know how to live without that sound he made when he saw me. That weight of him leaning into my leg. That ridiculous snore. I'd let him go, but he never really left. Some things you carry forever.